Hey everybody, it's Lindsay from North End Organic Nursery, and here's your garden minutes. So today I want to kind of go over what to do for tomatoes sort of mid-season. Today is the 13th of July. So mid to late July, we want to be making sure that our tomatoes are continuing to grow healthy, giving them some extra food, pruning back some excess foliage, and making sure that the foliage that we're seeing that doesn't look exactly what we think it should look like is normal. There's a lot of stuff that I think people excessively worry about when it comes to tomatoes and their gardens in general. And there's quite a few things where you're just like, yeah, just don't even give it too much thought. So tonight I'm going to try to go over some of the things that I don't think you should be worrying about also. So like I said, it's about mid-July. My tomatoes are all in containers. I've been doing that for the last couple of years. I actually really like doing them that way. I planted them a bit late, so they're not as big as probably a lot of people's are at this point. But this is a really good time to sort of give them some direction. If you started early on doing a single stem method where you pinched off all of the little suckers, good on you. That's really a fantastic way to go about it. You'll get bigger, better looking fruit. You may not get as much fruit as you will if a tomato plant's just kind of left to its own devices. It'll put on more branches with more flowers, which will then equal more fruit, but the quality of the fruit will be lesser. I've kind of done both, and this is kind of how I do both every year. Is I start to do the single stem method for a while, I leave town for a few days, I come back, there's too many suckers to take off without just kind of destroying everything, so I just let it go. So my plants are sort of in between. They're not a complete bush falling down all over the ground, but they're also not a nice little tidy single stem. So we're gonna bring this in a little bit closer and take a look at some of the pruning cuts you might wanna do. So first off, with any type of pruning, whether it's on a fruit tree or a perennial or a rose, the first cut you wanna do is getting rid of dead, dying, and diseased. So down here, you're gonna see some of these leaves are kind of icky looking. And quite frankly, on all of these plants, I wanna take up all these lower leaves. There's no need for them to be there. They are just a fungal problem waiting to happen. Every time I water in here, it splashes up and it can cause issues. So, preferable to use a real pair of garden shears, but somehow I cannot find them this evening and the light is waning, so scissors it is. I'm a strong believer in not making good be the enemy of perfect, right? Okay, so I'm gonna take this guy out. So here is a sucker, and it's gonna have little flowers on it, and I'm kind of tempted. No, I've got lots of flowers up here. This guy can go as well. And put them in my little pile here to clean up when I'm done. But any of this gross looking stuff. So this is a good part of the question, what should I be worried about? When you've got icky looking lower leaves like this, that is not something that I would stress about. That is just things that happen in the plant world. If you were to go out to a forest, you're very rarely gonna see a plant or any kind of vegetable or a tree just looking pristinely perfect. We want that in our life when it comes to gardening, but it's just not always realistic, so don't stress it. Now, let me cut this little guy off too, because it's sort of unnecessary, but I do want to show something here. See how those leaves are curling? Not worried about that either. A lot of times when we have the huge fluctuations of either water, heat, cold, just vacillations of extreme temperatures, which we get here quite a lot. This is called physiological leaf curl. It's where the leaves kind of cup upwards and curl in. Overall, the plant looks nice and healthy. I'm not worried about it. It has a few icky branches here and there that I'm just going to remove. Oh, look, I just exposed all those beautiful little fruits down here, which there's all this foliage up here that's going to do plenty of photosynthesis to support these guys. But that physiological leaf curl just isn't worth getting upset about. It will usually go away. It tends to happen in larger leafed varieties like this guy here, and smaller leafed varieties that are less potato leaf like, more fine tomato leaf, don't usually get it. So don't stress that. So I'm gonna take a few more little random cuts here. I'm gonna go up it a little bit. This is a nice sucker that I don't really need. Some of this foliage is just excess. Now, later in the season, we'll see this guy, this is a nice big sucker too, but it's got all these good flowers at the top, so I'm gonna let that one go. Later in the season, I'll do even a more dramatic thinning, which won't be as dramatic if I do a little bit of thinning now, but it will be to kind of hurt and starve the plant. Tomatoes really do well with quite a bit of abuse. They do not like to be coddled. And the more you coddle a tomato, the less delicious the fruit will be and the more waste of energy you will have. So I'm gonna leave this guy here. That's a nice, really good thin back for now. I still have got all this fruit up here and plenty of foliage to support it. And I've gotten rid of some of the dead, diseased, dying type stuff that just didn't need to be there in the first place. Let's move on to the next plant. So this next guy is just a little bit getting too bushy and too out of control. So I'm gonna take some good cuts out of him or her, whatever it may be. First off, I'm gonna do like I did before. I'm gonna go down to the bottom, get rid of all of the lower branches and any suckering bits that are coming from the base, because it's just sucking energy. And I'm gonna leave all my good flowering stuff up here, but I don't want any of this lower foliage, especially the stuff that looks like it's had water splashed up on it. The other thing that this is also allowing the plant to do is to get air circulation. Not only are we removing some of the energy wasted, but we're also letting it breathe. And when you have air circulation through, you have better pollination. Let's talk pollination. Okay, who has ever had a tree? Who's ever had a tomato plant that was covered in beautiful flowers but didn't set fruit? This is actually fairly common, and a lot of it has to do with heat. And when it gets really, really hot outside, these little pretty flowers here, which are self-fertile, that has both male and female bits in it, they will open up into the sunshine in the morning and wait for either wind or a bee or something to come by and kind of shake it to let that pollen fall into the ovary. So what we want it to do is do that before it gets too hot, because when it gets really, really hot, that pollen will fry in the daytime sun, making it unviable, and therefore when it does get a chance to finally get shook, it won't be any good anymore. So we want to do it in the morning. Come out here with your cup of coffee, tea, whatever you like to do for your morning ritual, and shake your cages here. If you shake your plants like this, you will get much better fruit set. I've had this, I don't know how scientifically proven this is, but it's worked for me every year. And when I've explained it to people who are smarter than I am, they said, oh yeah, that makes sense. So I continue to do it and it works for me. So let's prune this guy out just a little bit more. I want to make sure that I don't cut out too many stems that have good looking fruit on them. But again, we want quality, not necessarily quantity. So let's not let the plant give us a lot of unimpressive bounty. We want impressive bounty. Hear me, plant? All right. Nice chat. And I am kind of randomly just pulling out stuff, because if I see flowers or fruit being set, I'm just taking out some of the extra foliage. You can see the sun gold in this picture here. This one has some yellowing lower leaves. After we're done doing all this, I'm gonna show you about fertilizing, and that might be part of the issue here. It just gets a little hungry. When a plant gets hungry, it will redirect its energy and the nitrogen specifically to its newer leaves, leaving the old ones looking kind of icky and yellow. Not something that I get too worried about. All right. This guy's got really nice kind of flow going on. Generally with my cherry tomatoes, I don't do a ton of pruning because they're super productive no matter what. And we're not really going for state fair winning sizes on your cherry tomatoes. So we're gonna call it good here. Moving on to some fertilizing. Okay, so finally we are going to give our plants kind of a mid-season snack. So hopefully when you planted your tomatoes, you use a good organic vegetable fertilizer that had a nice hit of phosphorus in it, along with nitrogen and potassium, along with some calcium. That gives the plant something to chew on. I like to put a dry fertilizer in at planting. About mid-season, I really like to kick it in with some compost tea and a little bit of liquid calcium, which helps with tomatoes to prevent blossom end rot. And then I also use something that's an organic high bloom. So this is the Gardener and Bloom Organic High Bloom. These are really good things to add to your compost tea. Now, if you get your compost tea from us at North End Organic Nursery, it has these ingredients in it already. I'm gonna add a little extra because when we make the compost tea, we're not adding so much into it that it overactivates the microbes, which is really what you do in a compost tea, but then you use it right away because people are taking it home and letting it sit. We don't want it to be too active and ferment and go bad too quickly. So I'm punching it up a little bit more from what it has at the nursery. So what is compost tea anyway? Compost tea is a powerful probiotic fertilizer, plant nutrient, miracle worker. We have a lot of people who come and get compost tea from us every week, and they put it on their plants, and they say that's their secret to gardening success. And the reason for that is because of what goes into it. It's a base of worm castings, a beneficial micro blend that we get from Plant Success Organics. That's really fantastic stuff. And then we add fish kelp molasses in a smaller quantity. And then we also add micronutrients and some calcium. So you can take that home and just use that straight up, and you are getting a fantastic brew for your plants. But I do like to add a little extra, especially since I've not been doing the compost tea on the regular. I keep on forgetting to bring it home. I work there and I forget to bring it home. So I'm pumping it up a little bit to compensate. So what I like to do is do that granular when you plant about mid-season. So planting, flowering, and then fruiting. So planting, we put down the granular. The first flowering would be a great time to do the compost tea with a little bit of organic liquid nutrients. And then when they are starting to fruit, that's when you want to put in another dose. So you're kind of giving it a little bit of micro feedings along the way, especially with me because I'm doing pots. Pots are going to leach out a little bit faster than my garden beds. And I want to make sure that every time I water, I'm not leaching out all my nutrients and the plants are sitting there hungry. So we're replenishing some of those nutrients. So I've taken my compost tea here and I've poured it into my watering can here. And I've added some of the fish kelp molasses, the high bloom, along with that calcium. And now I'm just going to give my plants a good dosing. I would say about half a gallon per plant should suffice. This is a 2-gallon watering can, so it should cover about 4 plants. The next thing I want to do is put down a little bit of the Harvest Supreme. This is a really nice composty, mulchy top dressing that has a good hit of chicken compost in it, along with a whole bunch of other really awesome nutrients. And it's a great thing to top dress your containers with, your veggie beds with. It helps to retain water a lot better, and as you're watering, it flushes it with more nutrients as the season progresses, replacing some of that which the water is taking away. So I'm just going to open up my bag of Harvest Supreme. I'll lean it up against here. You can take some handfuls of it, put it in and around my pot. Just going to aim for about, I don't know, a ½ inch to an inch worth around my plant. And then, like I said, as I water, a bunch of the goodies here are going to make their way down into the soil. And that will kind of get more of a slow feeding. Plus, anytime you're adding organic nutrients to it, it's helping with the flavor, it's helping with the resilience, it is helping with the general vigor. So that's about what I'm going to do for my tomatoes at this particular time. We have pruned them. We have gotten rid of some of the dead, diseased, and dying. We've decided what wasn't anything to worry about, and you can just kind of go on. Now, things you do want to worry about is if the whole plant's going yellow, or it's going yellow up one side, or starting to yellow severely from the bottom moving upward. If you see the very tops of the plant starting to curl or act funny, or any of the other leaves starting to kind of go in on themselves tightly, that could be like an herbicide damage. The top could be like a curly top disease. But if you're just seeing random bits and pieces of ugliness or things that look less than perfect, don't sweat it. Cut it out and try not to look at it anymore. But if it spreads, then you want to start looking into possible diseases or pests or damages that might be happening. So don't sweat the small stuff. Okay, so we talked about that. And then we're going to fertilize about 2 to 3 times throughout the season with a good liquid fertilizer, and then top dress with some Harvest Supreme. And this will keep these plants rocking and rolling and give us one of those really great harvests that we all dream about. Once we start getting into about mid-August, we're going to start thinking about stressing the plant out, because tomatoes don't do well if they are happy all the time. So we want to give them something to get stressed out about. They want to feel like they're dying before they really want to put all their energy into reproduction. So they don't realize that we live in Idaho. They're a subtropical plant, and so we have to give them some indication that the end is nigh. And by stressing them out, by reducing how much water, cutting back a bunch of the foliage, you give them that opportunity. But that will be another video. That's all we're going to do for tonight. Thanks for joining me. This has been Lindsay with the North End Organic Nursery and Garden Minutes. If you have any questions, please post them below in this video. Find us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you would like to, please subscribe to our channel and like this video so it helps us to reach more people. Hope everyone's having a wonderful summer, and we will see you next time. Bye now.